Okay, so last time we were talking about shear diagrams. Remember, all lateral resisting strategies, it's either a moment frame, super expensive and strong, but yet at some point can fail. A shear panel, which is a monolithic structural element. Typically, if you think of a car, a concrete or masonry wall, a huge piece of steel does kind of count as, you think it's a monolithic structural form, right? Or X-bracing. So the idea that they're either, and X-bracing is either compression or tension. We'll kind of look at that differently in some stuff. So either way, it's just the idea that it's being braced, right? So in this one, we have the moment connection here, moment connection here, moment here, right? The base of all those columns is what's resisting the forces this way or resisting the forces this way. In this plane, we have that shear diaphragm, not a shear wall, but we call it shear diaphragm. That way we know we're talking about the horizontal plane, okay? So floor diaphragms or roof diaphragms, same thing. So I want those three, that you're always just trying to identify those three as a great first step. This is really kind of our goal of doing this is reverse engineering these complex things so you know how to start proposing ideas in the first weeks of a design. This isn't about nailing everything down, but it is about kind of understanding the impact of your design decision. So today, load path. In load path, we're usually looking at a specific element. So we're looking at, say, the load path of this, what falls on this column, right? We're selecting one column, and we're going to kind of understand what are all the vertical loads. How does this building get to the ground? Now we're going to cheat and just take it down to this foundation because there is a whole nother concrete column below here, or a wall, as we saw in the under floor plan. But right now we're just going to look at this one. I'm going to walk through a little model that I created, and then how I might edit this to really communicate what I think is important, because it is, you're communicating, so you're kind of, how much information do you want to set? My first idea was to actually capture the whole corner, right? I was like the column, maybe the other column in the background, what would be considered, at first I was thinking I would do like this whole corner here. So column here, and all of that happening, right? That was my first idea. But when we'll look at it, when I did that, it's pretty huge. It's kind of hard to then see what maybe is important. So I realized that I'm probably going to edit and do something that's much more like this as an understanding of the load path diagram, which means I might need to diagram the larger idea in a different way. So my model might get bigger to show more, but it also means it might need to be accompanied by a diagram to tell the whole story. So that back and forth, right? Some things we were talking, people were bringing up dimensions. I'm going to tell you why I used these dimensions. This building, we're working in metric. This building is working in metric. I think there's some really easy conversions. 2 meters is approximately 6 feet. It's very close. It's close enough for us modeling this. So it's said that this is about a 60-foot thing here, divided by 5. That's about 12 feet a piece, which is probably 2 meters on center. So these are probably 2 meter squares like this. So that tells us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8 in the middle, which is a total of 18, and 18 times 12 is 216. Yes. Okay, so 216 was the size I was using. 60 in, I was flipping back and forth. I was using this reflected ceiling plan since we knew the 60 was here. This was an easy one to count. And so the idea that there was 5 here divided by 60 is 12. So 12 a piece, that gives us that. So that was kind of how I was looking at the size of this, 216 by 216, 60 and 96 in the middle. All right, so that was the dimensions I was using, which are pretty close, but at least will stay proportional. Let's see, what do I want to do? We jump into this. I did find where that stupid parameters thing, although we're not going to get into it. So the idea that we could set a reporting parameter that we could change and then control one of these. Remember I was saying I can't find the panel. It's called global parameters. That's where all the stuff you can edit and change. So I'm not going to deal with that, but there is a way to do it in the project so that if we change the overall width, the proportion of the oak cantilever would stay the same. That was kind of a fun goal. So that way, if you made it bigger or smaller, the proportion would stay the same. But regardless of that, what I did for this project was I started in the first floor plan and I roughed out my reflected ceiling lines. I then created a massing in place, and I drew a plane which I subdivided, and then in that plane, I just the same we did the conceptual mass. I ran short ones one way and long ones the other. I renamed them the same way we did in our tutorial with big beam and blocking, you know, the extensions. So I did that's exactly I did it for the whole thing, right? What was nice then is that that was set. We're talking about heights. The reason why it's nice to actually do the entire like finished thing in the project instead of conceptual mass world is that we can set the elevations to be working with correct things. So I have like first floor and roof elevations tagged. So I'm actually working with the real levels, which means all of our views and sheets work. If you just bring in this big object from conceptual mass, it's not locking to those same things. So that was kind of a nice thing. Now, then what was fun with the columns is I could then just turn around and drop these columns in. Once I loaded the column, they actually as components, which is an easy way. There's different components, or you can drag them from, there's my Mies column, and you're just dropping them around or locking them to intersections. So I just quickly dropped them where they were. And actually the way we had left the column in the past is it was actually the wrong height. So when I first brought them in, they were all 22 feet was where we had left them for the overall thing because we had just been playing around with it. And so I dropped it in. I made sure they were on the first floor. My roof is at 24 feet, which is what we were figuring. I was like, oh, hey, these edit type need to be 24. And then they all line up. Okay, so that's how I did this pretty quick. You could do it with the double beam system and using the I beams, or this way. I don't care. Now, let's figure out how much weight is actually going down here. So we're going to do actually a little bit of rough estimating of the dead load on this. Okay. What is the difference between dead load and live load? What does it mean by dead load is fixed? So what assumptions can you make?
Dead load is not going to change. So like that's the weight of the material, the structure, all of that, things that are like equipment that's not going to like move, that's going to stay there forever. And then live load are things that are moving.
Okay.
People, furniture, like stuff like that. Yeah.
So what about snow?
Can you say it again?
What about snow?
Snow will melt. So I think I wouldn't treat it as a dead load.
Snow, wind, rain, they all count towards one thing and not the other. And that's why they are considered dead load. Okay.
Yeah.
We really want to make sure that they're handled. Live load changes. It's not a consistent thing. What we want dead load. So the one, actually, that's kind of interesting. I never thought about it this way, but this kind of makes sense. Let me stop share real quick. When we're building something, you might order a piece of steel with what they call a camber. Does anybody know what a camber means? A wood beam or a steel beam might come with a specified camber. Does anybody know what camber means.
It's kind of like a tilt in.
What was that?
It's kind of like a tilt in. Right?
Yeah, kind of breaking up. Can't really hear you. Sorry. But the idea that it actually has a bit of a pre-bent to it. It's bent up. Okay. Now, why would you get a beam pre-bent up when you want, let's say, a flat floor or a flat roof? Because once we actually put all the construction together, we want it to become flat, right? So this is engineered. You would never, as architects, we don't ever design that, but we would say, hey, we would understand that, hey, this might come with a camber. And until all of the granite flooring or the concrete top or the equipment's there, it might not level out until all of that dead load's there. This is what's interesting is that if you think about it, the reason why, if this is a roof, if we counted rain is snow, if we counted snow load as a live load, this is always calculated for dead load. So when it's done in place, it's level. Live load would then make it flex down, right? And we would never want snow building up and it flexing down. So the idea is we think of worst case snow load and the idea that it levels out with the worst case snow load. Because as soon as you make a dimple with water, it increases and you have failure, right? So the idea that the snow load has to be dead load because you would design a camber for it, right? That would be a super significant thing. So it's kind of interesting. I never really thought about it that way, but both glue lambs you might order with a camber and steel. You'd order if big enough, size enough, and it's going to have enough dead load on it. They would come with a little bit of a pre-bend. And that is for dead load only. If it was for live, if it was designed for live load, it would always be flexing up a little bit. And then when people stood on it, it would go down. And when people got off, it would go up and people got, it would be moving all the time, right? So you wouldn't want that, right? So that's the amount of deflection. That's a whole nother thing on how much deflection you want on the floor. But this is kind of big, heavy stuff that's going on. So with that said, when we, just a little background, if I say we're ordering a W26 by 40 by 112, what does that mean to you? Jeez, I can't write. If I said we were ordering a W6 by 112, what does this mean? What can you tell me so far? Right. So what does that mean, and that mean? There's three things here. What do these three things mean? Italia. We talked about it in Forest.
You talking about like
Them is the dove.
Section.
Blank.
Yes, that's actually a couple of days. That works. So section, the cross section, what's the shape? The W, remember the W is relatively square. They're not always square, but they're relatively square comparatively. The 26 is a nominal depth. It's not exactly 26 inches, but it's close. It's usually right around it. When we say nominal, it's like right around to that. And then the 112, what is that weight? If we were to say it's 112, it is weight. What does that mean? 112 what? $112.
Oh, the way that it can pass.
No, this is it, not its strength. This is it. So it means it's weight. But what is the nomenclature? How much the beam weighs? Yes, weighs what? So we say 112. What is that? What are the units? What's its understanding? We're going to use that to figure something. Kips. Yeah, no, it's a little big. These are much smaller than kips. So, but kips are 1,000 pounds. So this is pounds. So a W26 by 112 is 26 inches high and 112 pounds something
Pounds per feet.
per linear foot of that beam. Okay, because these are beams, right? And so every linear foot of that beam, one chunk, if you were to just take that, we were to take that I-beam, if we were to take this, W, and cut one linear foot of it, it would weigh 112 pounds, okay? Why do you think, this is interesting, because the reason, let's say I do the same, W26 by 50. What is it going to look like? What's going to be different about the W26 by 50? If this is pounds per linear foot and we just cut the weight in half, what has to get thinner? Right. So what's your, it's not that, it's interesting is we don't label the thickness of the flange as a dimension. Okay, it's not part of the nomenclature, right? But the weight is. So if we know it's a big, heavy one, we know this thing's gotten really thick because that's how it's getting the weight, right? Which is adding strength. We know if it's smaller, it's going to be the exact same dimensions in cross section, but much thinner flanges. Once you realize why, it's really smart, because it's the idea that we can roughly design something to carry X amount of size. If we're building a floor and we need a big beams or some joists or some steel framing, but then maybe in one area we need it to be a lot stronger, well, we'd really screw up our ceilings and our floors if all of a sudden things had to get deeper or not. But the ability to just come in and put in a few that are much heavier to handle a big piece of equipment or something above it is a great way of strengthening without changing all the rules, right? The ceiling doesn't have to drop, the air conditioning doesn't have to change. This is also why even when we think of them as columns, the center line, maybe where the wall attaches, none of that needs to change for it to become a stronger member, right? So this works with kind of all the things, the I's, the C's, the L's, the idea that the second number is its weight. Now, if we have, it's also a thing where steel is sold by the pound, right? So it's not about its shape. It's like you're just buying this and then they can add up. Well, you had, 1,000 linear feet of this cross section. Well, that's 1,000 times this weight. That's how much steel you purchased. It's a price per pound of steel. So it's an easy way of calculating costs, right? Because it's just pounds per linear foot. Now, if we have that pounds per linear foot, we can figure out how much weight is this roof framing, right? Okay. So first thing, I'm going to be going back and forth. If we jump into Revit really quick, remember we loaded in some real framing. So this is a cheat. But I remember we went into insert, load family. You can do a steel framing is one way. So a lot of these are just, it has to be 3 dimensions if you want it as an object. So some of these are just the cross sections and some of these are like, these are just shapes and profiles. So I had grabbed big old, that one. And remember, so this is interesting. A WWF, so gigantic, 79 inches is almost exactly 2 meters. So I'm guessing 2 meters is a pretty standard size, when we think about stuff. So that's why it's 79. And now we have 3 different ones. So this is 364. So 364 pounds per linear foot, all the way up to 490 pounds per linear foot. Okay. So just kind of interesting on how that, now we do have some of the dimensions in here if you really need to, but that doesn't matter. We're just going to take some rough estimates. So let's just say we're going to use, let's be easy and say we're going to use 400 pounds per linear foot. We don't know exactly what size, but maybe it's one of these two. So now we could just instantly estimate that every linear foot of one of these things is 400 pounds. Safe rule, right? So then let's start estimating some stuff. If we have studio. If we have beams every 12 feet, right? This one gets a little weird. So we want to calculate the weight of this, but I want to figure out roughly what's the total average per square foot, right? One way to think about that, I'd say, okay, this beam is, if I was let's say this is like a normal, not the weird two-way that is this project, right? If I was doing this normally, I'd say, oh, these are 12 foot on center. So the trib space for this beam is 12 foot. And 1 linear foot of that would be 1 linear foot of that. So for every 12 square feet would have been 400 pounds, right? That 400 pounds there, I could be in essence saying for every 12 square feet of that, which 12 divided by 400, we get 30 pounds, 12 square feet. Yeah. 12 square feet. Each one has to be 400 divided by 12. 400 divided by 12. I'm not trusting my head right now. 33. Okay. 33 pounds. I think.
Wait, 400 divided by 12 or
12 divided by 400. No. It's 12 square feet, 400 pounds. You're dividing 400 by 12. Yeah. Okay, 33 pounds per square foot. So right now we could say that's 33 pounds per square foot. But what's weird is we've got and so I could just take that and say, okay, what's their total square footage that's hitting this? And that's what would be going down to that column. So in a normal building, might be doing that. But what's weird is we have the other one going the other way. And there's different ways to think about this, but in essence, it's doubling, right? So I was in one way to think about it is I kind of just said, well, what if happens if it's in theory, it's just 1 every 6 feet? This is the same amount. You think the total number of beams, you rotate them, it'd be 1 every 6 feet. So that's, in essence, 400 divided by 6. And we get 66, right? So let's even round up. We're trying to be safe every time. So let's say we've got about 70 pounds per square foot. So a square foot, that's a sign that means square foot. I don't know. I'm used to just writing it and stuff. So I write that for square foot. So 70 pounds per square foot is our average for this. Now let's think if we did a little diagram and said, okay, what's this total square footage? We had 218 times 218, and we are taking, this column is taking 1/8 of it, right? So if we said 218 times 218 equals that divided by 8, we've got about 6,000 pounds in that area. So it was kind of here, the logic was we took the linear feet, the weight per linear foot of that I-beam, we averaged it over its trib space to get an average per square foot, the top plane, right? We took the whole area of the building, figured out what the proportion of that column is doing, and multiplied that by that. Now that's the weight. We've got about 6,000 pounds. Oh, that's just pounds. Going down for that column, right? For just those WWF beams. Now, there is a big, huge steel plate on top of this too. Remember that roof structure doesn't have much to it, but it does also have a giant steel plate on top of it. So looking up, I just said it was like, what if it's 1 inch of steel, big old pack of steel, 1 square foot of steel is about 40 pounds. Okay. So we could say, okay, well, this was the WWF was, actually, let's add it up by square footage. Let's do this cleanly. WWF, to be a little more, the weight of the beams was 70 pounds per square foot. There is a piece of steel plate. And let's say it's 1 inch thick steel plate. That is about 40 pounds per square foot. Okay. And that's kind of the roof buildup. I looked up, we look at, this is kind of interesting. I was like, hey, let's look at what Berlin's snow load is. So I just quickly did this, share, let's just do this. I did like snow load. Berlin, Germany. Hit this, and it gave me, in kip, it's like 0.85 newtons per meter squared. Oh, I need to convert that. So I threw that into like, I just copy and pasted found the thing. PDF, gave me some weird converter. And about 18, hell, let's say 20 pounds per square foot. So we got another 20 pounds per square foot. No.
Yeah.
So 20, 40, 70, we got 60, 30, let's do 130, 130 is easy. Okay, so that's pretty much the whole roof buildup that's at the top of this, right? So we've got 130 pounds per square foot, and we're going to multiply that by remember the full one divided by 8. So if I do the 130, let's do this right. 218 times 218 times 130. That would be the total load of the entire roof staking divided by 8. We have that was square footage, because I wrote that wrong. So we have about 6,000 square feet. Is that area 6,000 square feet times the 130, right? That was the 6,000 square feet was that area, because 218 times 218 divided by 8, that's the total square footage times 6,000 square feet. I was like, why did the number jump so much? So I'm just going to go 130 times 6,000. So we've got 780 kips. Because numbers get that big, so they just get rid of those first 3, and kips is 1,000 pounds. So 780 kips. Okay. That's how much is going down on that one column. Tons. So let's say divide it by 2,000. That is 390 tons. I was going to say a ton of weight, but it's actually 390 tons of weight. Be accurate. Okay, so let's say a number, these are some numbers that I want you to have, because I want you to include them in your diagram, because this isn't hard math and we're rounding up all the time. We're just logically thinking through what are the weights that we know, what is some worst case scenario, the biggest things, how do we average it over the square footage, what is this column having to take? Right. If we were getting really fancy, that 780 kips would be, when we're talking about like how small that bearing area, how small that pin connection could be. Well, that's the weight that we're saying, what does the bearing area of the steel need to be to transfer that load, right? This is how we're understanding the ballpark that we're in, right? Okay. So those are just some numbers that I want you to have walked through using whatever method you're using. Now, how do I want to diagram this? Well, so I came to realize that when I did the full corner, it was just so big. I didn't think the diagram would read very well. I was going to do a dashed line kind of showing that all of this quadrant was here, was going to this column. But I realized, like, I don't know if it helps. I think actually just the little diagram, the little plan diagram we did probably shows the overall trib area, right, for this column. So like doing a little key plan and doing one, my mouse go, doing a key plan and then doing one that it actually reads a little more accurate for what I want, exploding it out, kind of understanding what's happening, right?
Hey, did you record again?
Yeah, I am recording.
Okay.
It should be, well, I didn't stop recording. Stop sharing, shouldn't turn it off. It just goes back and forth. It's just right in the back of you can see about it. So the idea that I was trying to figure out what's a fun one. Now, this is where it was, there are some interesting things you can do. Like when you're looking at this, at first I was like, well, when I was doing the other one, let me go in here. When I was doing this one, you know, you can actually move this around in the plan view to get it exactly where you want. But what I realized when I was snapping, when I was getting to there, I was falling on a beam and then the section doesn't look as good. You know, that doesn't read right because you want it to read. So I was, even when this coming back in and adjusting, this is where getting used to using multiple windows at the same time so that you can be accurate stuff is super helpful to when about moving back and forth. But I still thought that was too big, so I went to small. Let's see what we like. So this seemed to work pretty well. I like the idea of this. I exploded it off once or twice and started to see what we could get. I am going to play around a little bit in Illustrator already, but we're going to kind of start with that. So any questions on the idea of the data? All right, on the weight, on like what we just talked about there, like any big questions?
Wants to like fire or multi.
We just did. This is all I did right there. Well, if you have a, if we had a little floor plan, if we had a little diagram. So. I think you should have a little diagram that shows somehow the building or the corner. You could be showing this is the trib area. You could have the X number of square feet written on it. You could have pounds per square foot of snow, blah, 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 all written out there. So that's not showing math, that's showing the numbers, you know, like, right. I do think you need to, you could show all that because what's interesting is we could actually show, does each one of these transfer the same amount of weight to this beam? Does each, I'm asking out there, does each one of these connect? Each one of these is welded to this beam, right? This is dropped down right now. Does each one of these transfer the same amount of load into this beam? Yeah. So does each one of these coming to hit this drop the same amount of load on this beam? If this is the trib, if the trib area, no, exactly. Each one of these is bringing way more weight, right? That's why that's what I was saying. Like, what's interesting here is that the middle ones are carrying way more weight over here because these are self-supporting. This one's only really go, you know. In fact, it's transferring load. So, so the idea that more and more weight is coming on there, which is kind of an interesting thing to diagram. You know, we could actually, because we've done this, you could actually do a quick little assessment. If we were to draw a line across here and somehow show that this is the trib area, we could say, what is the trib area? You could have a different basic load dropping, understand of each one of these coming down onto this, because that's what's actually happening, right? What's that doing? Well, that's just figuring out what is the trib area for this one. Well, it's there to there, there to there, They're there, right? What's that square footage? Well, that's 12 feet. It's 12 feet, and then that's half of 12 feet. So it's 144 plus 72. 144 plus 72 is a little over 200 times 130 pounds per square foot. Right. And so this is where this diagrams can become pretty rich just with those basic numbers, because you could show like, hey, this is what makes it unique. Each one of these is actually loading this beam differently, which although it seems very uniform, that edge beam is actually having to take a lot of different way to cross it. So let's kind of work through some of these, and we'll do some kind of basic illustrator tricks too. Okay. How did I get here, and what would I, this is only halfway because there's just too many profile lines everywhere. Select, there's. How do you make quick versions like this? How do you make that happen? Is that the step that really makes where something was something else? Okay, so what are we gonna do? Do we like this one? Kind of. I want it thinner. For some reason, it always looks more interesting when these things are a little more dramatic. Like I like having. Why is it running so? Some things doing just. Yeah, because this is like. It's crazy. I get out of Revit. Wow. Sounds not happy. What happens if we do that? I got to do at least one more. So this is like one data each side. That makes sense. This column is actually the one that's right. This beam is the one that comes in right over that column. So that's just kind of looking out to each side. That kind of works. A little bit of drama would be a nice, interesting diagram, right? I'm kind of composing it, looking at it. Does it tell the right information? If I got the little plan next to it, does it tell me enough? Okay, so I'm gonna do let's do this real quick. So I want to make a new one of these. So after we get this out, I'm going to show you how I made my project template, because I realize there's a few things that have changed. And so I'm having to redo it every time I open a project. So it's driving me nuts. So some of those things. So inconsistent color, we're going model. And I want consistent color. That 10 at large is a bit much. I'm going to edit. Like I was being overwhelming to see it, but it's a bit much. I'm going to go to like 6. Just like that. All right. The other thing that I realized. Idea of the section box is on. I did realize that section box does not print. So it was always drawing, I was kept hiding it, and I was like, you want to hide it? It doesn't matter, it doesn't print anyways. So you can just let that be there, it doesn't show up. Okay, so this is good. I've saved this one. I'm gonna this is called small load path, and I'm just gonna delete the other one. I'm going to rename this one. We're going to do this all correctly. Load path. And if I want to be, I'm going to right click on duplicate. If I do duplicate with detailing, it stays exploded. So I'm going to start by doing that. But really, what I want to do is actually not explode this one and reset them. So I've got the 2 of them perfectly the same. I'm just going to rename this one. So I got 2, they're both all fine. Yeah, okay. So let's export. So I'm going to, that does one, I'm going to do in session just because I'm going to get these two out. It's the load path and load path there. Okay, it's fine. The other thing I know I screwed up is in my template, it says landscape, it screws everything up. So I have to go back. So I want to fix those things. Okay, 2 sheets of separate files. Yes, I want separate files. It's going into my thing. Look at 2, sounds good. If you noticed in yours that it freezes up like at like 4 bars when the printing, just stop it really quick and go again. It's I notice it happens a lot when I'm saving online, like when that file print, you see those like little bars. If it goes to 4 bars and stops, it's nothing to do with it. It's where it's trying to save it. Just stop really quick and reprint. It got lost in where it was putting it. It's a stupid thing, but it's not your computer being overwhelmed. It's just not finding it. So, okay. So here's the 2. They should look perfect. But if not, sounds good. Illustrator, and I'm going to file open. You can grab both, you can open them at the same time. Yeah. Oh, hold on. So what I think is fun about just having the whole one like this is it can be nice. We're going to work with color it down a little bit. But this one, so I don't do it that often. I'm just going to start by setting a background. So I use. I don't know why I use this. I've got stuff saved. Come on. Here we go. I'm going to use, so I've loaded a whole bunch of these from online because I like just having the same one. So I've got a grayscale one that I like. What are you doing? Is it not giving me my stuff? Loading in pink. Okay, that one loaded. Why did my grays not load? That's weird. Come on. All right, whatever. My grays are being weird. So I usually like just having it where I can load in the few I want and I don't need to deal with it, right? Run it over it. I'm going to make a box really quick on one layer just to do something. And let's make it. Let's take that to the background and I can lock that one. That color's terrible. The color's just too bad. Use the orange first. Okay. The reason why I'm going to do this is this one's exploded, right? We can have some fun with taking the other one. We're going to separate this out a little bit, and I want to grab just the lines and select, say, appearance. Those. Other layer. Okay, now I just got these, right? Now it's interesting because I can kind of I can grab all of these, say, hey, I want you to, I'm going to control copy. Jump over to this other file, control V to go on there. Control V. Now I just dropped in that exact thing, but I'm going to change all of the fill to white. Okay. So right now, there's in essence a ghosted white behind everything. Quick way of getting cycle. Now it's silly because it's a whole bunch of mayhem. It still works really well. You don't have to mess with it. It's just there. So it can be a nice way of showing something hiding or not. So you can, especially if we did like a subtle tone difference between these. Ooh, I grabbed this background one. Make it gray there. Now all of a sudden we get the ghosting of where something is, right? Nothing more than just dropping those into it. Okay. If I want to get that cool outline as a dash, the way I've done it in the past is we could make a new layer. I tend to like to use the line work to do it. You can also, actually, we'll grab a new layer. I'm going to turn on these things, but I'm going to lock those layers, and we can draw over the top really quick. Lock everything, and then you can draw over the top if you want to draw the line really quickly. Sometimes that's faster, not always. B, Control X, Control E. Yeah, I got the whole line. Yeah, I got the whole line. We can make it have R and dash it and get the profile that we want out of it. I didn't grab the whole. Sorry. Jumping around. There we go. Control X. Let's go. There we go. And now that you can do a red line on it. It's dashed. So ways of getting. I'm gonna grab that. It needs to be on. I have a notes layer at the very top. There we go. Dashed. Yeah, so it's trying to work out things like that. So the idea of cutting and pasting from one to another, that's why I want you to kind of think through, like, how can I get things from one, because we've locked the views the same, because those things are coming in the exact same place. So how do you use that to jump back and forth? So the biggest goal for you is, like, how do you get those profiles quickly? The other thing that works a little bit, works pretty well, is the idea of combining them to get solid. If you haven't worked with Shape Builder, so I just made a whole bunch of boxes to put the stupid things for all. So I haven't worked with Shape Builder. This can be really nice if you're trying to build. It's kind of like trim in AutoCAD. I don't think people use it enough. By grabbing all of these, and yes, you can select and build. Actually, everybody out in either who uses Live Paint. I mean, if any of you use Live Paint? Anybody out there play with Live Paint? Exactly. That's what I wanted to go through. So, yeah. So Live Paint locks everything to one layer. So if I have a whole bunch of stuff on a whole bunch of different layers, but I want to cut something out, like maybe I want to cut all of these out right here of the things, but they're on different layers. If you use Live Paint to like make an object, it smashes all the stuff to the same layer. But here I could just like add and say, I want the form to be that, and it makes that all well, or I want to combine these. But what's nice is if you hold Alt, you can actually just subtract too and cut into stuff and remove. And it's just in essence like a trim command. Like everything's a trim command everywhere. So alt, and that can be really useful. And it's amazing because like if you want to add some stuff together or subtract stuff, this can be a really great way of adding or subtracting things because of what you want in the end. It's just Shift M or shape builder. Live paint bucket, think of it as like if you want to color everything uniquely and then be able to change those colors in the color scheme, like you're painting a butterfly wing and you want to change the color spectrum of the butterfly, then that's what it's used for. We don't do that. I swear every time that I see a student going to use live paint, they're actually probably wanting to do more of the shape builder. That's the product, right? So I highly recommend getting used to learning that because it's really useful for getting for cutting stuff out. Right. So let's say we've got this started. I'm going to also in this file, I want you guys to get used to making additional artboards. Okay. Because we're going to do, let's say this is a plan diagram. You might not know exactly the scale that you want to use them to. And when you're in Illustrator, try to think of it as all content. I want to make this content usable later, but maybe at a different scale. So if you have them on the same one, you're composing the board and that gets too much. So what we're going to do here is look at a couple of nice tools. I'm just going to make, let's say a line. And if you haven't, I'm holding Shift and moving it out just whatever distance. I want to create a diagram of plan. I can take this, Control copy, Control Shift Alt V, means I put one right down there. I hold Shift, rotate it. I grab both. You know, drop to the top, maybe allowing left. Okay, I got that. I know that's a perfect square. I can move it. Let's do it. How would I do this? Let's do this. I want a perfect square, but I want them all independent. If I draw a box, it's directional, like Revit is. People don't quite understand that. But so I control copy, control Shift V, hold Shift down, rotate. I can go align both. On left, on top, drag over, holding Shift. I grab both of those two, line right. This is more of just getting you to think about these different tools, right? The align line. In essence, these are 4 independent ones. I'm going to draw a box next to it using the box command and show you how this does something different. The idea that there's directional here. I can draw the box. I know it's square using A, just using A, get rid of those and have 2 lines that way too, right? But these are directional. And I'll show you what happens. If you blend tool, if you double click on blend, you can specify by color or steps. We know we need 18 bays, which means there's 17 columns between there. So I have 17 down here. I grab this one and I grab this one. I get 17 bays. I grab. I'm going to do it again, but we grab this. Oh. It's in the same. There we go. I'm going to do it again and grab this one and grab this one. Those were directionally different. So it's silly, but these 2 lines were drawn in the opposite direction. So watch what happens if I change this. Just understanding blend command is live. So that that was just a lot of hassle where you have different ways of things. So now I've got this one. I can also go blend. Boom. The triggers too. But are you not getting it? There we go. Okay. So I'm getting those. Those are all pretty heavy, which means we still just grab the outer ones and say we want these lines. It'd be like now we want columns. Diagrammatic, so I'm gonna leave them square. Let's see. So where do these fall? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right there. Alt. Okay. Diagram of all these, grab these two. Oh, just you. Control copy, control V. Rotate. All right, I'm gonna grab this one. Hold shift. So this is kind of, I don't know if you've done this before, but the idea that when you grab multiple things and you use those align tools, like if I grab this thing, and I do left align, it always picks the outer one. If I come back in and hit one again, you see how this gets right on, just hit left align and top edge align. When you select this thing again, it's the thing that everything's judging from, right? So just making sure that this lined up well. Okay. So that copy control V. Just take a look at this. And I'm just going to go on here. And then I can go and grab that line, this line, and this line. And let's say make the thing, and we're going to take the color. I'm not seeing it. So, all right, please. No, the color selected, it doesn't pick. That take the opacity down a bit. Okay. So I don't know what scale I want to use that, but I did a diagram that shows me load path really quickly. When we're dropping this to make our board in InDesign, you know, this might end up floating over the top. This might end up being somewhere else. This might end up being smaller. This might be part of the logo. You know, you don't know. So like the habit of making additional artboards, I tend to then come back in and you can go to the artboard and make it. Yeah, just tight to what's happening is kind of a smart way to work. That way you know you get what you get. So I recommend taking time to get those skills down with this project. That's cool. So if we're looking at this one, how I could go back in, the idea of the use of the bright color, like I probably wouldn't use the red. I might do that. Do some stuff. I might have a dashed outline on all of that as in the background. Might even pull this down a little farther. And we can start to talk about weights. Can we have different arrows coming down for each of these that has a different letters, right? Annotation layer. I recommend labeling like annotation layer so that those float over the top of everything, stuff like that. I'm not going to sit here and do all of this. Commands that. Okay, how about this? There's a number of commands that I think are really worth doing if you're not comfortable with Illustrator, but I don't know where all of you are at. And some of you have been working a little more than others or not, or have just more classes on that. The idea of shape builder, the idea of blend stuff that's super useful. Other tools that I want you in this. If I'm looking to make a if you're using a set axon, I can use a just by grabbing the element. I can usually get this to get pretty close to what I need to have happen. There's different ways to getting that axon. If you got it set pretty close, it's like, okay, I can get this. Where this needs to go up a little. And then I'm going to start using that to work. What I'm looking to see where it lines up. It's close, pretty close. Does that start to become plane that's ghosted? Too much. Text. You can rack text. So when I say rack, if you go in, view transform, window if you start, this is so weird. Okay, there's these two things here. Minus 30. You can start to write stuff really quickly. Okay. Now that I'm using just like the true axon here, this is where the more that you start to mess with the axon, the more that you got to fight to get those numbers right. What's really dumb is that if you do it the opposite order, it's different. So it's really, you gotta get, and each plane is different, meaning that was one plane. So those kind of things are pretty, once you get it done, it can be really nice. I challenge you to get all of your text, get that skill down. It's super helpful in presentation. So, and you can still, also getting your, actually, let's take that text, getting the text to not be black on white. Like we have this bad habit of making text black and then putting it over white, and then all of a sudden it's the most highest contrast. This thing that everything's looking at. And that's not the important thing. Text is usually secondary, like you're learning more about it as you read the text. So I challenge you, how do you get your text to be important and be legible? One thing I'd point out here is like the way I did the white in the background, it's the highest contrast. If we're to look at this, so the highest contrast is this dark on this white. It's instantly focusing people where I want them to look. Right? I challenge you to start layering in all of those skills. How do you make sure somebody's looking where you want? How do they see that clarity? Let's step out of Illustrator for a little bit because I just want to see where you guys are at, and then we can talk about what I can point you in the direction of tutorials to kind of up those skills. I want to see how far you can take this and make rich diagrams, right? These can also start to get fancy and unique. We can start to take different line weights and colors and stuff, but make sure whatever you're doing is adding to the what you're trying to say, right? Yep. Any specific questions about Illustrator that you want to talk about? Yeah. Or, no.
You want us to like, if we focus on building that and let it lead to my saying. There's any additional things we need diagram.
The only thing, well, so how about I want you to step back from that a little bit. I want you to diagram how this building resists lateral forces and how this, and I want you to diagram this building's load path. Now, as we are looking at this building, you really got to see the whole building to see the lateral, to show all three ways, right? Okay. When we look at the whole corner for lateral, it was a little too much. So then we were making the decision, well, hey, the diagram is much more interesting if we just take the sliver for the load path. But now we're missing information. So now we're choosing to do a diagram to this. I'm not telling you to do anything. You need to look at a building and start to understand how do you communicate a load path and a lateral. So as we were going through that, those decisions are the decisions I want you making. I'm showing you how I was making it to communicate this. Okay. So in the end, you're communicating those two things, load path and lateral. Some of the other projects, we might be able to just do a diagram for each, and they're perfect. If I was going to compose this board with these things together, I'm betting that my shear diagram or my lateral resisting diagram might be pretty small because it's pretty simple. It doesn't need much detail. So I don't think this diagram that we have here, I think this diagram is going to be, if I was going to lay out a 10 by 10 board, I might make this the entire board and then have a little plan and maybe the little axon with the shear in the other direction, maybe about the size of that plan, because frankly, that would be telling us the story. Another one we might do very differently. So that is kind of the bigger goal, is starting to look at, hey, how do I say what's important here? Okay, which is a lot about editing. And actually prioritize it's making something small because it's just that diagrammatic. That's a good question, because that is kind of the bigger lesson. This is the first one, so we're walking through it this way. There'll be other ones, we'll have different opportunities. Anybody else out there with some basic questions? So I can do some just recommendations. I highly recommend setting swatches open all the time. Because we work in projects, make swatches that you like. It used to be that you could just go, oh yeah, there's the Adobe. If you guys all have the Adobe cap, there's the Adobe color. Actually, let's do that. I haven't pulled from there. It used to be embedded. So doesn't have Adobe color.
Yeah. Like put it in color you want, and then on the side you will
Explore. I think, yes, there's you guys doing something. I think you could say, hey, I want kind of some spring color, vintage color. I want some vintage colors. Like, think of the theme of your project. But instead of, I don't think many of us in architecture are good at color. So I highly recommend, so the idea of even like picking like what is summer themes, happy themes, luxury themes, tropical themes, and then just going through and finding a few that are close. And I'm 10 to 1 that I like, most of you have probably heard this before, but complementary. I'm a big fan of, in essence, split complementary. So you have the accent color and you've got a couple of themes, a couple of colors over here. I think because we're always communicating things and there's always hierarchy in that communication, having an accent color that pounds against the other two is just really nice. And you can do this in any way. So I'm pretty sure, like, and you can really see it when there's like these there isn't really a split complementary here, you know, but you can select complementary, but not split, yeah. So I think you can do, well, and transits too, like I just pulled most of my stuff going like, hey, what's going on right now? What are colors that are big in something that's happening? And Adobe, like everybody's using this, so it's literally what people are using right now, right? And that's kind of crazy. So I would say don't make it harder on yourself. But I think you go create, I think you can do triad, split complementary, right? And then you can start playing with what you want your accent color to be. And you can do kind of range on how crazy you want those, you know, and that's cool. Yeah. So what is the accent? What's there? And then you can extract and drop it in. Okay. I tend to just do that once or twice on a project and that's it and leave it alone. And then I tend to have, especially if it's on like I think I loaded a whole bunch. Oh, that's right. Shit. Let me find that. This is funny because this is what I did for that project. Because I don't care about color. Like I know I want to use split complementary. I don't care about the actual color. So I sent them to the client and I said, what colors do you like your research? So, styles. Oh, wow, there's just somewhere in here. Really? It's actually a funny little presentation. So I actually do want to find it. In the email. It's not really except for oh man. Ah, yes, this is hilarious. All right. So I sent this to him. So I go, okay, like this one, that one, the other one after, one before, last one. And then he said, which one like that's what I used. It's okay, because I have worked with like my old boss, he's like, I never put blue in a project because he had one client that just hated blue so much and the color pissed off the clients. Like I was like, I really don't like this project. I really like the scheme. And we're like, well, okay, so what is it? Because we kind of like really worked it out pretty well and based on other meetings and everything. And at the end, the client was just like, well, I just really don't like that blue wall and how it goes there. And it was just this like really, it wasn't rendering. It was just, we just colored like then the color blocked him out. And he just hated the blue so much. He just hated the whole scheme. It's like, okay, how about tomorrow we send you some stuff? Change. So just getting them a quick read and letting them tell you what to do. So I had just picked out a whole bunch one night, sent that to the client, and then that was the first time that I had started saving things in the library and pulling that from that. So I highly recommend that. Yeah, there's so much. So this is, so when you open, that is the one problem. When you open the PDF, it only opens what it's there. If I go file new, where's my, yeah, again. So I have these set. Ooh, I had saved all my. Okay, so the things that I do set up and I do recommend is swap, like how you place these changes, you know, how they actually, there's stuff that I open up all the something, actually, those don't even matter to me. Get rid of those. I don't do actions that much, but the things that I do look over there, so actually, it's over there, I don't do it that often, and the other one that Finder's pretty nice every once in a while, but it's like, I know that there's stuff I'm gonna pull out every once in a while. And then I know there's stuff I'm using all the time, so I like being able to just see it. Layers gets bigger and bigger, so I just like having that at the bottom. I think this opens up all the time. It's kind of like my working, what I'm using and working the most, so I have it right in the middle. I leave the swatches open and the transparency open because I'm always messing with those two things. So I set up my board like this and then it opens all the time. I find it really useful, just putting it out there. Revit. I'm going to save this and then I'm going to walk through the things that I would do to make a project template. So what you might want to do just to set up some basic things. Yeah, I'm just close the view, close all that down. Close that. Okay. We can start by doing sample architecture project. No, I don't want this. I want to do the sample. This. I'm going to just go new and use material architecture. So I'm just going to, that's probably what you opened. This is the project. I renamed some of these things, so I like do 0-1 because I want it to not be alphabetical. So I want everything else to be updated based on that. To elevation, we see those. How you doing? I'm gonna do it. Wait. Make, create, no. How do you just automatically? Should have automatically, I should have been able to duplicate this and then make the level. Is it? Oh, that's been a while. Instead of duplicate, make level. Yeah, so instead of copying, make level. So I would set up some of these things this way. Yes, and all the stuff gets set up. Now, the things that we've been using is this idea of the view template. So I'm going to click on the view template first. Architecture presentation is close. I'm going to duplicate this one. Be whatever acronym you want, and we're going to start with just line only. Okay. I'm going to go into annotation and select everything. You can actually just do it like this. So select all, invert. Okay, but section marks. Okay. I go into model. I turn them, keep the mass off. It depends on kind of how you're working, but I found that when I'm printing, sometimes it's best if the mass is off. So that's usually where it's fine. That's fine. That's fine. All the tags, analytical. I turn all of these off also, because in this presentation thing, that's all I want. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, model display. This is line only, so I don't want shaded. I want hidden line. This is how I created a new one. If you just want to make your own, I went in here and I said new, And I said, again, make maximum number of things heavy. Lines, and I'm gonna make this. Let's say so. Okay, so I made my line, apply. Shadows, all that should be off, and that's get the depth hues, turn all that off, lighting, realistic, all that off. With it's because it makes it open. I don't enable sketchy, you don't get the vector if you do the sketchy line, screws up everything. And background. I know you might want to do a gradient or a sky or something. It instantly makes it the JPEG and takes away the vector, even if you do the hidden line or the consistent. So it changes the thing, which is a bummer. Because I actually tried to do a gradient once and I made all these colors just a flat, like a hyper green, made them all the exact same hyper green. And I thought that would be a way of selecting that consistent color as a back, but it didn't. So it is so made it a JPEG. So keep that for these things, none. Okay. Let's let you change. Oh, apply. Okay, so we got that one. You can actually go in and I actually went through and like a lot of them I didn't like. So after I got there, I you can delete them. Oh, you can delete them. Sorry, delete them. Not letting me delete. Huh. Weird. Thought I was allowed to delete them. I mean, that's what the delete's for. So swear in mind, I got them all deleted. So that stuff, that would be some things I do. So I get some basic names of stuff that I know I want, and then file. Other one is print. Just go through it once we can save all our stuff. This the views you pick every time, but in the setup, make sure it's portrait, roster, high's good, the page is fine, center's good, center, hide. Save, that's the default. Hit OK once just so it goes through. Sure, that's fine. It's not actually going to do anything. It gets it saved. So you do all that, and then you file save as template. And I started by just throwing it, I think, on my desktop. I think is how I started to do it. So I should have. That's there. So what we want to say then is I got to figure out where this stuff is. File, new project. It is in browse. Imperial, down that whole list, but in templates. Okay. So the program data, Autodesk, Revit 22, templates, and then I'm in Imperial. Yeah, there's my other one, and that's I would just drag and drop the one that I created into there. Okay, and then it'll be an option for you. Start with that, redo it again, fix it up and make sure I'm going to save mine, delete it, and then resave it as a new one. So that's not the one actually I'm doing. All right. So I mean, I can almost just go. Do you have questions about trying to do the work either lessons modeling or drawing, because see where you get with Illustrator to know how much more without just answering specific questions. The when you load up, you might realize that there are like a weird line. That line is a certain color that came in because it was plain. That was one of the original lines. That idea, like getting used to select same appearance, so you can just delete stuff when there's those little balls that come in because it was some, you know, I can select same, let's say fill color, and it gets all of them. I think this is a different way, 0.06. And what's funny is it's just, so just getting rid of stuff by that is super easy compared to fighting with it. We're trying to go through and trace them all down, track them all down. Right? Actually, since that is not, you can actually do that with the squares just as easy to transform rack. There we go. It's not actually right. No, it wasn't. We have to figure that out. Sometimes it's actually just go in and grab. This one is the profile. Yeah, it's copy lines. I hate that it does that. It should just be so nice. So struggle with that. Like it's a junk export, but so if it was just clean, it'd be awesome. So just say, see you. So I don't have anything to go over. Okay. If you have questions, happy to go over some questions. If you want to share your screen, you can share your screen. I can try to work through something. But we'll copy Control Shift Alt B. It's just so useful. Control Shift Alt B, so you can put stuff back. Exactly. Take care of everything and stuff like that. That's interesting. Does that screw it up once you? I have never noticed that. Okay. No, I can remember. Yeah, I was just wondering if having the additional artboard screwed everything up. Yep. So say it'll be just a upload a PDF. Put it in the PDF presentation, a board that is, what was this thing? Strategies. Like, yep. Mhm. Anybody got any questions?
Nope. I
Oh,
will
my.
after I watch the story
Yeah.
again.
More about Revit or Illustrator?
Revit.
So even doing, watch this. Let's say, how about, I'll do this really quick. Share. So this will be, so if I just go new, use mine. If I do nothing more, I could do how quickly we can build this project. So I'm gonna go into first floor. Actually, I'm gonna go to second floor. I'm gonna say structure, beam system. And I'm gonna draw the square, draw a big square. Not even correct, yeah, it's a big square. And then I'm gonna say, yeah, that's fine. Random beams within there, not even the beams we want. So, oh man, that's too bad. So let's load in the beams we want. Insert, load family. Steel framing. On. Yeah, it's on. It's in there. And I can grab this and say, hey, I want it to be the big guy, and I want them to be 12 foot on center. Get that going. We could edit the pro, we could get it the size we want. I could also just do, this is where normally I would go if this is to be really fast. Yeah, okay, good. I got two of them. Crisscrossing. This is the super kind of fast way to do it. Now that the beams in there, let's say structural, because it's a structural framing. There's that view. Grab it. Put the end one on. It went down below, so I have to set it up. The height's the same. Yeah, so I could have to set up right there. I could AA it, get it to line up the way I need. Structural beams don't show in the architecture, so you gotta. So, but we could drop in. Let's see. So 218, right? Hate these things sometimes. Oh, just. Yeah. Oh. Can't tell what my mouse does sometimes. I'm not kidding. Make that. You. What is it? You are just. Two 260, wasn't it? No, 260. Not 260. is where I tend to think I'm beginning to set up all the reference lines and all of that, but even just throwing some stuff in and correcting it after the fact. Yeah. This is. So doing it first is always nice because it doesn't see there's another stuff. I touch this, that's 60, that's nice. If you've done load family, if you built the pipe, I mean the column with the generic model, not the pin. Okay. I can drag it and drop it in as it's a generic model, or drag it and say, okay, where do I want it to go? Well, corner there, or there, corner there, or there, intersection. They're not the right stuff, so I'm going to go, okay, where is everything? Second floor, I'll take this manipulator. I'm just going to get rid of the roof. Okay, I'm going to save this is at 4 feet. Beams are going down, so I'm actually going to raise that up to 30 feet. Now I can go back, hit SA, it grabs all of them, edit type. I can start getting set up. Let's snap up a long beam on the edges. Yeah. So this is where using the you see here using consistent colors might shows like we're not, because these beams are just in theory going past each other, it doesn't see the line there. So the line would be different. You'd be missing that inner line if you use the cheat of just using pre-done beams. It doesn't understand that they're intersecting. So the cheat works a little bit, but it doesn't. You don't get that line there. Different ways. All right. Buddy. All right. As soon as this processes, it takes about 10-15 minutes for it to process, or less than an hour. You can, if you go back in, you'd have to add that line in everywhere. And you